Next, I'd like to turn to the largest human rights demonstration anywhere in the world, or the largest annual human rights demonstration anywhere in the world, the March for Life in Washington, D.C. It's an event that's held annually on the anniversary of the Supreme Court's decision in Roe v. Wade, which effectively legalized abortion throughout the USA. It's massive. I've been following this for a few years now, and I can tell you it's absolutely colossal every single year. And if you haven't seen it, you can look it up. The video, I think Students for Life have on their Facebook page, time-lapse, or you can probably just Google time-lapse, and watch it. It's astonishing. Official estimates of attendance are not given, but reports from previous years have been as high as 650,000 people. I think that's possibly a bit generous, but if you watch the video, you will be astounded. There are at least many tens of thousands of people in attendance this year and in previous years, which may have been bigger, smaller, who knows. And despite the size of the event, the mainstream media have consistently refused to acknowledge its existence or given only perfunctory coverage to it. And political leaders have consistently been too afraid to go. In 2019, for example, they did the numbers, and on average, networks gave 15 times more coverage to the smaller pro-abortion Women's March, which is held the next day. Major networks showed 14 minutes and 26 seconds of Women's March coverage and only 58 seconds of March for Life coverage on average. And many mainstream media networks refuse even to acknowledge it. And so you see how the media construct the narrative. Last episode, I pointed out that large sections of the media, their fundamental concern is not the truth. Their fundamental concern is power. And they want to exert their collective influence on the narrative to get the version of events and to get the prevailing headwinds of politics channeled in a particular direction. It doesn't matter about lies. It doesn't matter about truth. That's quite irrelevant. And they ruthlessly, therefore, silence and discredit voices they don't like, and they give a free pass to voices that they do like. And you can look at our own country, for example. Let's look at Margaret Court, who's a current example, and you can see, if you Google her, one of the first things that used to come up before this latest situation with her being honoured at the Australian Open is that, she said that trans kids are of the devil. Now, she absolutely never said that. Now, that's allowed to persist, that's allowed to hang around. Why? Because people say, ooh, Margaret Court's the mad aunt. Remember, that's what that tennis person said. Or they can say, oh, well, we can't really support her, we'll distance ourselves from her. And so she's ostracised and her voice no longer influences the public narrative. It's the same with the March for Life. They cannot show it, because it does undermine the narrative, because these people look good. This is one of the most wholesome, decent, family-friendly, non-violent, non-expletive-laden, marches and protests you'll see anywhere in the world. And they're all so young, and there's heaps of women. Polls consistently show that women are more likely to be pro-life than men in Australia and the USA. And so many of them are volunteers and charity workers. Many of them, they see Down syndrome, holding signs saying, I'm Down syndrome. A lot of my fellow Down syndrome babies have been killed. I'm here, I'm alive, I'm thankful. I'm conceived in rape, says other signs. And I'm here and I'm grateful. Another one says, I chose to have a child under great pressure and duress, and I'm, thankful. They can't show it because it so profoundly undermines their narrative. And so, as a result of that, 3 Republican presidents have not gone: Bush, and Reagan. Not because they're unsympathetic, but because it was too risky. The wall of fear erected by the media around this, and the loud voices which could pounce and marginalise, were too scary for them. And the extraordinary thing is this year, for the first time, the president attended and spoke, and he spoke extremely well. President Trump's speech, you can look that up as well. I'll quote one of many excellent bits. He says, all of us here today
understand an eternal truth. Every child is a precious and sacred gift from God. Together, we must protect, cherish, and defend the dignity and the sanctity of every human life. When we see the image of a baby in the womb, we glimpse the majesty of God's creation. When we hold a newborn in our arms, we know the endless love that each child brings to a family.
Great words, and pretty theologically robust, I've got to say. Now, that's President Trump, and he is billed as the most pro-life president in modern history. And the progress of the pro-life movement in America is becoming really enormous. And the hard workers in many organisations over there have done a phenomenal job. It's progressed culturally, it's progressed politically. You can look, for example, just in recent stats, 58 policies were passed at a state level in 2019 restricting abortion. 158 pro-life judges were appointed, which is huge in the American system. International pro-life advocacy was also conducted. I think Donald Trump even spoke at the UN and mentioned, but I remember seeing it. Title X funding, which is the government's family planning program for poor families or low socioeconomic families, is not permitted anymore. They don't fund organisations who do that sort of service where abortion is provided or recommended. There's a halting of research for human fetal tissue from elective abortions, and here's a big one. Those are sort of policy changes. There's a cultural change as well. There's a cultural change because the abortion rate in the US was 16.3 per 1,000 women immediately prior to Roe versus Wade in 1972. It then peaked in 1981 with the legalisation of abortion at 29.3 abortions per 1,000 women in the ages of 15 to 44, this is. Now, today, it's down to below pre-Roe versus Wade levels, 13.5 per 1,000 women. There's been a huge PR effort. You look at the Unplanned movie, for example, and the massive box office success that was, the charities and the ministries that are set up around that to support people who want to get out of the abortion industry. You look at, I've got friends over there that run ministries where they walk into parks all over major cities in the US and they show people videos about abortion to educate them and help them. Also, there's groups over there that have done incredible grassroots action programs where they have gone into districts where there's elections being held and they go door to door and knock on doors and they tell people about abortion. They educate them about what it is. They tell them about how children feel pain. They tell them about all these sorts of things, show them videos. And then they go through and, they talk to them about the party policies on this. And do you know what's happened? Voter turnout in those areas has markedly increased and votes have been changed on the issue of abortion. And because of their grassroots activism, the headwinds have changed in America because people have not been weary since 1973. When Roe versus Wade happened, they've not been weary in doing good. And the fruits of that are being seen, and being seen in saved lives, and being seen in changed hearts and minds, and good charity. There have been vans driving around in the US giving free ultrasounds to pregnant women. Why? Simply to show them that this is a baby. This is a life. People have got so involved. And I use this as an example for us because when you look at that march, you think, wow, if only in Australia. Yeah, if only in Australia. That's the vision, right? Because fruit is not always immediate. It can take decades, it can take time, it can take a little bit at a time, but it's worth doing. And those who attended rallies in Sydney in the last 6 months, and they were huge rallies and they were tremendous, those who continue to march in cities like Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth and Brisbane and march every year, keep doing it. Because as the movement grows, maybe one day we'll have a Prime Minister or a Premier in this country who will break through the fear barrier and declare themselves to be pro-life. And maybe we too will see policies that start to restrict abortion rather than liberalise them. And maybe we too will see people informed and knowledgeable and change hearts and minds. And maybe we too will have endless opportunities for Christian charity to do good in this area. It's such a great case study of Galatians chapter 6 verse 9. It says, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." Hey, one more thing. I've been looking at the metrics and I figured out something. You guys are watching the videos and not subscribing. So please help us out a great deal by hitting the like button and then hitting subscribe, hitting the bell as well so you get the notifications. It helps us out a really great deal and you can click here to see more videos.